My name is Ava Bennett. I'm 26 years old. And the strange thing about the moment your life starts slipping out from under you is that it rarely sounds like a disaster in the beginning. There's no dramatic music, no screaming, no shattering glass. No scene big enough to warn you that this is the memory you'll replay in your head later when you can't sleep. Sometimes it starts with something so small it almost feels ridiculous to care about. A missing photo, a changed tag, a tiny edit in a digital life that suddenly makes you realize you may have been edited out of someone's real one too. That was how it began for me. 2 weeks ago, on a Tuesday night, I was standing in my kitchen waiting for pasta water to boil, half scrolling through Instagram, half thinking about whether I had enough Parmesan left in the fridge to call the meal respectable. It was mindless, automatic, the kind of ordinary moment that makes betrayal feel even crueler afterward, because your world can split open while you're doing something as stupidly normal as checking your phone in socks and an oversized college sweatshirt. I had been with my boyfriend, Mason Reed, for 3 years. We didn't officially live together, but we were close enough that most people assumed we did. My toothbrush was in his bathroom. His hoodies were in my closet. We had favorite takeout places, favorite shows, favorite lazy Sunday routines. The kind of habits that start to resemble a future before anyone ever says the word forever out loud. Or at least that's what I thought we were building. So when I opened Mason's profile that night and noticed I couldn't find any recent photos of us, I froze. At first I thought Instagram was glitching. Then I kept scrolling. The beach trip from last month? Gone. The dinner from my birthday? The one where I wore that black dress he said made me look like trouble? Gone. Even the ridiculous Halloween couple costume from last year, the one he insisted on and then spent the whole night bragging about because strangers kept laughing at us? Gone too. Not archived from one angle. Not buried under newer posts. Gone. I stared at the screen hard enough that the pasta water behind me boiled over with a violent hiss, but I barely noticed. I called him before I could talk myself out of it. "Hey," I said when he answered. "Did you delete our pictures?" There was a pause. Not a long one. Just long enough to feel wrong. Then he laughed, but not his usual laugh. Not the low, easy one I knew. This one was sharper. Higher. The kind of laugh people use when they've been caught off guard and need half a second to put on a mask. "Oh my God, Ava," he said. "Are you seriously doing this?" My grip tightened around the phone. Doing what? Being paranoid over social media. I'm not being paranoid. I just noticed all our photos are gone. "I'm cleaning up my profile," he said, like I was stupid for not understanding. Too many random posts. It looked cluttered, but some of those were from last month. He exhaled through his nose, irritated now. "So you're tracking the timeline of my Instagram?" That hit harder than I expected, because suddenly I wasn't the girlfriend asking a reasonable question after seeing herself quietly erased. I was the clingy woman auditing timestamps, the insecure one. The exhausting one. He made me feel embarrassing for noticing. "Seriously," he said, his tone colder now. "Maybe focus on your own life instead of obsessing over my account." For a second, I just stood there in silence, feeling heat rush into my face. The worst kind of manipulation is the kind that arrives so calmly you almost accept it. It wasn't loud enough to call abuse, not obvious enough to point to with certainty, just subtle enough to make you wonder whether the problem really is you. "You're right," I said finally, though every instinct in my body told me I wasn't. "I'll drop it." "Good," he said, instantly softer, like I'd passed some test. "Love you. I've gotta go. Julian needs help with something." Julian Martinez, Mason's roommate. I knew Julian well enough to picture his face the second Mason said his name. Dark hair, dry humor, the kind of patient expression that always made him seem like he noticed more than he said. We'd hung out a bunch over the years in group settings, movie nights, takeout on the couch, lazy Sundays when I stayed too late and Julian wandered in with coffee and some deadpan comment that made Mason roll his eyes. Julian was easy to like. He was also, as far as I knew, loyal to Mason. So I said goodbye, hung up, and stood there staring at my phone while steam clouded the kitchen. 3 years together, and suddenly I was crazy for noticing he'd scrubbed me from his life online. No, something was off. I shut off the burner, cleaned the mess on autopilot, then sat down at my kitchen table with the phone in front of me, like it might confess if I waited long enough. I checked his tagged photos. That was when the cold feeling in my stomach turned real. Most of the pictures where friends had tagged him with me were still technically there, but hidden from his timeline. Posts mentioning me were no longer visible unless you went digging. It wasn't random cleanup. It was methodical, selective, deliberate. Like someone trying to erase proof without making the erasure too obvious. Then I checked his relationship status. Still in a relationship, but no longer linked to my profile. I stared at that tiny missing connection until my eyes blurred. I don't know how to explain the humiliation of that if you haven't lived it. It was so small, so stupid, so online. And yet it felt like standing outside your own house and realizing the locks have been changed quietly while you were still inside. I could have called him back, demanded answers, started a fight right then, but I already knew how that would go. He'd tell me I was dramatic, sensitive, suspicious. He'd make me defend my instincts until I was too exhausted to trust them. So instead, I stayed quiet. And the next morning, I started paying attention. Wednesday, Mason posted a gym selfie. Fresh haircut, clean shirt. That relaxed, curated smile he used when he wanted women in the comments to tell him how good he looked without seeming like he was fishing for it. Caption about discipline and summer progress. I almost rolled my eyes and kept scrolling. Then I noticed one comment. A woman named Tessa Cole, looking good as always. Heart eye emoji, fire emoji. A little inside joke tone that didn't belong to strangers. I clicked her profile. Blonde, stylish, fitness photos, rooftop cocktails, heavily filtered candids that still somehow screamed effort. She looked like the kind of woman who knew exactly how attractive she was and had no intention of pretending otherwise. And she had liked every one of Mason's recent posts. Not just that day's post, every post going back about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Right around when our photos started disappearing. I felt sick, but still not sick enough to prove anything. Still not enough to let myself break. That happened the next evening. Thursday, I stopped at the Thai place Mason and I used to order from all the time because I couldn't stand cooking for myself again. I had barely stepped inside when I saw Julian waiting near the pickup shelf. He spotted me first. For a second, his expression changed in a way I still remember too clearly. Like someone watching a glass fall and knowing it's about to hit the floor. "Ava," he said. "Hey." "Hey." He glanced at the takeout bag in my hand. "Getting dinner for you and Mason?" The question was casual. Too casual. "Just me," I said. He said he was busy. Julian's face did something small and awful. Not dramatic, just a flicker. A tightening around the mouth. A split second of discomfort he tried to hide too late. And suddenly, all the blood in my body seemed to go cold. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He looked around like he was afraid Mason might appear out of nowhere between the spring rolls and the cashier counter. Then he said quietly, "Can we not do this here?" 10 minutes later, we were sitting in the coffee shop next door. Julian had a paper napkin shredded into strips by the time he finally spoke. "I hate this," he said. "I really, really hate this." My voice came out flatter than I intended. "Then tell me quickly." He looked up at me, and whatever he saw on my face must have convinced him not to soften it. "Mason's been talking to a woman from his fitness class," he said. "Tessa. He keeps telling people you two are basically over, that you just haven't made it official yet. There are moments when pain doesn't feel sharp at first. It feels silent, like the whole room gets pushed several feet away from you, and you're left sitting in the middle of it, trying to process language that no longer sounds real." "He said that?" I asked. Julian nodded once. More than once. He's made it sound like the relationship's dead already, like it's just paperwork now. But then you come over, and he acts normal with you, and He exhaled. I didn't know what to do. I stared at the table. The wood grain blurred. When did this start? Maybe a month ago, he said. Maybe a little more. He started going out more after the gym, dressing up just to grab coffee. Always checking his phone. Smiling at it. I gave a short laugh that didn't sound anything like amusement. Julian's voice softened. I'm sorry. That almost broke me more than the information itself. Not Mason lying. Not the disappearing pictures. Not even the fact that he'd apparently been preparing my replacement while still kissing me goodnight. It was Julian saying, I'm sorry. Like he understood that I was a person inside this humiliation. Like I wasn't just an inconvenience in someone else's affair. I nodded, because I didn't trust myself to speak. Julian looked miserable. I should have said something sooner. You told me now. Yeah. Why now? He hesitated. Because last night, he asked if I thought Tessa would care that he technically still had a girlfriend if he played it off like you two were already emotionally done. The room went completely still inside me. Not heartbroken. Not yet. Just emptied out. Like my emotions had backed away from the scene because they knew what was coming next. I thanked Julian. Eventually, he asked if I was okay, and I almost laughed again because the answer was so obviously no. But I said, I don't know yet. And that was the truth. Friday came with a kind of fake normalcy that makes betrayal feel insulting. Mason texted me around 6. Guys' night. Probably home late. Don't wait up. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote back, have fun. That was all. No accusation. No question mark. No begging. I spent the evening pretending I was functional. I updated my LinkedIn, rearranged a drawer, answered 2 emails I had been avoiding for days, did all the little productive things people do when they're trying not to collapse in real time. At 8:14, my phone buzzed. A text from Julian. Julian, I'm sorry. He just left wearing the watch you got him for Christmas. I closed my eyes. A second message came in. Julian. He told me it was guys' night. Then I saw Tessa's story. Rooftop bar downtown. Then one more. Julian. You deserve better than this. That was the moment something in me hardened. Not healed. Not recovered. Hardened. Because heartbreak is one thing. But there's a point where humiliation turns into clarity. And once it does, you can't go back to loving someone the same way. I opened Instagram, then Facebook, then every platform where Mason had been carefully shaving pieces of me out of his life while still expecting access to mine. And with a calmness that scared even me, I changed my relationship status to in a relationship with Julian Martinez. I stared at it after I hit save. It was reckless, petty, unfair to Julian maybe, but it was also, for one reckless second, deeply satisfying. If Mason wanted to manipulate appearances, then fine. Let appearances manipulate him back. I set my phone face down on the table, opened a beer I didn't really want, and waited. Because I knew 2 things with absolute certainty. First, he would see it. And second, when he did, whatever happened next was going to change everything. I didn't have to wait long. 23 minutes. That's how long it took for Mason to notice. I know because I checked the timestamp on his first message after everything was already over. What the actual hell is this? Is this some kind of joke? Take that down, right now. I stared at the screen, letting the messages pile up. You're seriously involving Julian in your nonsense? This is insane, Ava. Answer your phone. Then the calls started. 1, 3, 7, 12. By the time it hit 18 missed calls, I stopped counting. I didn't answer a single one. Not because I was strong, but because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. He would twist it, minimize it, turn it back on me until I was apologizing for something he started. So I let the silence do the talking instead. At 11:47 p.m., the silence ended with pounding, hard, aggressive, not knocking, pounding. Ava, open the door! I froze for half a second, beer halfway to my lips. Then it came again, louder. I know you're in there. My roommate Lily cracked her bedroom door open, eyebrows raised. That sounds intense. Yeah, I said, setting the bottle down slowly. It is. The pounding didn't stop. Ava! I walked to the door, not rushing, not panicking, just steady. Because somewhere between the deleted photos and Julian's quiet confession, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't unsure. I opened the door. Mason stood there in the hallway, still dressed for his night out. Duck button down, sleeves rolled just enough to look effortless, hair styled, shoes too polished for a guy's night. And there it was, that smell. Not mine, not familiar. Something expensive and feminine clinging to him, like evidence he hadn't even tried to hide. You've got some nerve, he snapped, pushing past me into the apartment like he still belonged there. I stepped back, closing the door behind him. Nice outfit, I said calmly. How was guys' night? Don't, he shot back. Don't deflect. What is this? He shoved his phone toward me, my profile still open. Julian? Really? I didn't even look at the screen. What's there to explain? I said. You said I was overreacting about social media, so I stopped overreacting. His jaw tightened. You're dating my roommate. Why does that matter? I tilted my head slightly. According to you, we're basically over anyway. That hit. I saw it in the way his expression flickered, just for a second. What are you talking about? He said too quickly. Julian told me, I replied, my voice still even. About Tessa. About how you've been explaining our relationship to people. His face drained of color, then flushed red, then settled into something defensive. He's lying, Mason snapped. I never said that. Really? I took a step closer. So you haven't been texting her constantly? You didn't go to a rooftop bar tonight? His eyes narrowed. How did you guess? His expression shifted again. Accusation, this time. You're spying on me now? He said, like that was the real problem. I almost laughed. Or, I said quietly, I just stopped trusting you. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, like flipping a switch, his entire demeanor changed. His shoulders dropped. His voice softened. And just like that, the performance began. Ava, he said, running a hand through his hair. Baby, this isn't what it looks like. There it was. The script. The same one people always use when the truth corners them too quickly. Tessa's just a friend, he continued. You know I love you. Then why delete our photos? I told you, cleaning up my profile. Stop. The word cut through the room sharper than I expected. Even he paused. Just stop, I said again, quieter now. I'm not doing this version of the conversation. Something in my voice must have told him I meant it, because the softness disappeared. Just like that. No more fake concern. No more gentle tone. Just honesty. Cold and ugly. Fine, he said flatly. You want the truth? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He took a breath, and then he said it. You're boring. It landed harder than everything else combined. Not because it was true, but because he believed it. Same restaurants, he continued. Same routines. Same everything for 3 years. It's predictable. I felt something inside my chest tighten. Not breaking. Not yet. Just compressing. Tessa's different, he said. She's exciting. She has ambition. She actually wants to do things. I blinked slowly. We went to the beach last month, I said. He scoffed. A public beach trip isn't exciting, Ava. It's cheap. There it was. The real version of him. Not the charming one. Not the attentive one. The one who measured people based on how entertaining they were. How long? I asked quietly. He hesitated. Does it matter? Yes. A few weeks, he said. Maybe a month. That lined up perfectly with the disappearing photos, with the new comments, with everything. And your plan? I asked. What was that exactly? He exhaled like I was asking something unreasonable. I was figuring things out, he said. seeing where things went with her. And me? I was going to tell you eventually, he said. Once I knew if it was serious. The words hit with a strange kind of clarity. Not confusion, not heartbreak, just understanding. You were going to keep me, I said slowly, until you were sure she was better. He didn't answer, because he didn't need to. That was exactly what he meant. I let out a quiet breath. Get out. He blinked. We're not done talking. Yes, I said, meeting his eyes. We are. You can't just get out, Mason. Something in my tone must have finally reached him, because for the first time that night, he looked uncertain. Not angry, not defensive, just unsure. Then his expression hardened again. The Julian thing better be a joke, he said. You can't actually be dating him. I let out a small laugh. Can't I? He's my roommate, Mason snapped. There are boundaries. Like not talking to other people while you're in a relationship? I asked. That's different, is it? He opened his mouth, closed it, switched tactics again. He won't do it anyway, Mason said. Julian's loyal. Maybe, I said. Or maybe he just respects people who don't lie to him. That one landed. He grabbed his keys from the counter, movements sharp and angry. This isn't over, he said. It is for me. He paused at the door, then turned back. One last attempt at control. You'll regret this. I tilted my head slightly. No, I said. I'll regret not doing it sooner. He stared at me for a long second. Then he left. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frame in the hallway. And just like that, 3 years of my life ended in under an hour. The silence that followed felt heavier than the argument. Lily peeked out again. Should I bring snacks or something? I let out a weak breath of a laugh. Maybe later. She nodded and disappeared, giving me space. I stood there for a minute. 2. Then my phone buzzed. Julian. I hesitated for half a second before opening it. Julian. So, I just walked into World War III. I exhaled slowly. I'm sorry. 3 dots appeared immediately. Julian. Don't be. Honestly, watching him lose it over the exact thing he's been doing to you? Kind of satisfying. A small smile tugged at my lips despite everything. Me. Fair. A pause. Then, Julian. Was the relationship status thing just revenge? I stared at the question longer than I expected, because when I changed it, I knew exactly what it was. Petty. Impulsive. A weapon. But now it felt different. Me. It started that way. Another pause. Then, me. But I've always thought you were cool. My heart beat a little faster after I sent it. Not from romance. From honesty. His reply came slower this time. Julian, for the record, I've always thought you deserved better than him. Something about that, the simplicity of it, the lack of manipulation, the absence of agenda, felt more real than anything Mason had said to me in months. Me. Coffee tomorrow? I sent it before I could overthink it. 3 dots. Gone. Back again. Julian. Yeah, I'd like that. Then a second message. Julian. Just a heads up. Mason is currently threatening to make my life miserable if I even talk to you. I let out a soft breath. Me. Can he actually do anything? Julian. Nope. My name's on the lease too. A beat. Julian. But it's about to get very awkward. I smiled faintly. For the first time that night, not out of spite, not out of defense, just because I wanted to. Me. Sorry for dragging you into this. Julian. Ava, you didn't drag me. Another pause. Then, Julian. I walked in willingly. I set my phone down slowly. The apartment was quiet again, but it felt different now. Not empty. Not broken. Just unfinished. Because the truth was, this wasn't just about revenge anymore, and whatever came next was going to be a lot more complicated than I originally planned. Sunday morning didn't feel like the aftermath of a breakup. It felt like the calm before something unfinished. I woke up earlier than usual, not because I had somewhere to be, but because my mind refused to stay still. Every piece of the past week kept replaying, but now it played differently. Not like confusion, like evidence. By the time I met Julian at the coffee shop, I wasn't shaking anymore. I was steady. He was already there when I walked in, sitting by the window with 2 cups on the table, like he'd guessed what I'd order. "Vanilla latte," he said, sliding one toward me. "You always get it when you're stressed." I raised an eyebrow. "You've been observing me this whole time?" He shrugged, a hint of a smile tugging at his mouth. "Occupational hazard of living with Mason. I learned to notice things." I sat down across from him, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. "Good to know I wasn't completely invisible," I said. "You never were," he replied simply. Something about the way he said it, no hesitation, no agenda, made my chest tighten in a way that wasn't painful. We talked for 3 hours. 3 hours that didn't feel forced or careful or loaded with hidden meaning. We talked about everything we hadn't noticed before. He collected vinyl records, real ones, not the aesthetic kind people display but never play. He loved horror movies, the slow psychological ones that mess with your head for days. He baked, which I didn't believe until he pulled a small container out of his bag and set it between us. "Chocolate chip cookies," he said. "World's best." That's a bold claim. "Try one before you judge." I did, and annoyingly, he wasn't wrong. "Okay," I admitted. "Those are dangerous." He leaned back slightly, watching me with that same calm, observant expression. "Good dangerous or bad dangerous?" I met his eyes. Still deciding, there was a brief silence. Not awkward, just aware. Then Julian cleared his throat lightly. "So, update from the front lines?" I sighed. "Let me guess. Mason's losing his mind?" "That's one way to put it," he said. "We've gone through denial, anger, and now he's in bargaining mode." Bargaining? He offered to pay my full rent for 3 months if I promised not to date you. I blinked. "You're kidding." "I wish I was." "And?" Julian smirked. "He also offered to set me up with one of Tessa's friends as compensation." That broke me. Not in a painful way, in a disbelieving, almost hysterical laugh that I couldn't hold back. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." I shook my head, still laughing softly. "That's actually insane." "It gets better," Julian added. "He called you manipulative for turning me against him." I leaned back in my chair, letting the absurdity settle. "He turned himself against me," I said quietly. I just stopped pretending not to see it. Julian nodded once, and for a moment, the humor faded into something more grounded. Because underneath the ridiculousness, there was something real happening, something shifting. "I meant what I said last night," he added. "About you deserving better." I met his gaze. "I know. And the truth was, I did." That realization wasn't loud. It didn't come with a dramatic epiphany. It just settled into place, like something I should have understood a long time ago. Monday morning was when Mason escalated. It started small. An Instagram story, a long, vague rant about toxic people and fake loyalty and friends who stab you in the back. No names, no direct accusations, just enough for people who knew him to start asking questions. I almost ignored it. Almost. Then Tuesday came, and with it, a text from an unknown number. "Stay away from Julian, or you'll regret it." I stared at the message, my stomach tightening. I didn't reply, blocked the number, told myself it was just him lashing out. But then Wednesday came. Another message. Different number. "You think you're clever? Watch what happens." That one sat heavier, because it wasn't emotional. It was deliberate, calculated. He read it, jaw tightening slightly, but his voice stayed calm. "He's trying to scare you." "It's working," I admitted. He shook his head. "Don't let it." Easy for him to say, harder. Thursday was when the line got crossed. I came out of work late, exhausted, already thinking about nothing more than a shower and silence. And then I saw my car. At first, I didn't process it, just a reflection catching wrong. Then I got closer, and there it was. A deep, jagged scratch running the entire length of the driver's side. Not accidental. Not a bump.
Deliberate. Precise.
My stomach dropped. For a second, I just stood there, keys in hand, staring at it like if I looked long enough, it might disappear. It didn't. My phone buzzed. Julian. I answered immediately. Ava, he said before I could speak. I need to show you something. What happened? I asked, my voice tight. You first, he said. My car got keyed. There was a pause, then a quiet, controlled exhale. Okay, he said. Then you really need to see this. A minute later, my phone lit up with photos. Julian's apartment. His door.
Covered.
Every inch of it covered. Printed screenshots of our text conversations taped up in messy, overlapping layers, and written over them in thick red marker. Traitor, fake friend, homewrecker, desperate. I stared at the images, a strange mix of anger and disbelief building in my chest. Is that Sharpie? I asked, slowly. Julian huffed a quiet, humorless laugh. Washable marker, actually. I blinked. Even in a meltdown, he added dryly, he's worried about the security deposit. I pressed my lips together, trying not to laugh and cry at the same time. I'm so sorry, I said. This is because of me. No, Julian said firmly. This is because of him. He was right. I knew he was right, but knowing it didn't make the situation feel any less insane. I'll pay for the damage, I said anyway. Your door, my car. Ava, he cut in gently. Stop. I went quiet. This isn't your responsibility, he said. You didn't make him do this. I swallowed. Because part of me still wanted to believe I had control over it. That if I had acted differently, chosen differently, stayed quieter, this wouldn't be happening. But that wasn't true. It was never true. Friday afternoon was the moment everything tipped from messy into dangerous. My boss called me into his office. The tone alone told me this wasn't routine. This is a little awkward, he began, closing the door behind me. That sentence alone made my stomach drop. But I wanted to give you a heads up before this goes any further. Okay, I said slowly. He leaned against his desk, arms crossed. HR received a call this morning, he said. Anonymous. Someone made some serious accusations about you. The air in the room felt like it disappeared. What kind of accusations? He hesitated. Stalking? Harassment? Showing up uninvited at someone's workplace? Their gym? I stared at him. That's not... I stopped myself, forcing my voice steady. That's completely false. I figured, he said quickly. The timeline didn't add up. The caller mentioned incidents on days you were here, working late. Relief washed through me, but it was thin.
Fragile.
Because the fact that someone had tried at all, that mattered. Do you know who called? I asked. He gave me a small, knowing look. I can't confirm that, he said carefully. But let's just say... It sounded like someone trying very hard to sound concerned. I let out a slow breath. Of course. Document everything, he added. Keep records. This will blow over, but we have to follow procedure. Understood. I left his office with my pulse still racing, because now it wasn't just emotional fallout. It wasn't just petty revenge. Mason wasn't just angry. He was trying to control the narrative again, and when that didn't work, he escalated. That night, my phone rang. Julian. I answered immediately. You need to pack a bag, he said. What? You're coming over tomorrow. I blinked. Julian, listen to me, he cut in. Mason just told me he invited Tessa over for dinner. I went still. In your apartment? Yeah, he said flatly. And he told me to make myself scarce. His exact words were, he deserves to use his own home for dating. The audacity. It almost made me laugh. Almost. So what? I said slowly. You're just going to leave? There was a pause. Then, no. Something in his tone shifted. Not angry, not reactive. Just, decided. I told him I'd be out, Julian said, but I didn't say where. My heartbeat picked up. Julian, he keyed your car, he said quietly. He tried to get you fired, and now he's acting like he's the victim. I closed my eyes. He doesn't get to control how this ends, he added. When I opened them again, my reflection in the dark window looked different. Not broken, not confused, just done. What are you thinking? I asked. A pause. Then, come over tomorrow night, Julian said. We'll be there when she shows up. My pulse kicked hard. That's a terrible idea. Probably, he admitted. Another pause. But it's also the only way this stops. Silence stretched between us, because I knew he was right. Mason wasn't going to stop. Not on his own. Not until something forced him to. And maybe, just maybe, that something had to be us. I took a slow breath. Okay, I said. Another pause. Then Julian's voice softened slightly. Hey, Ava? Yeah? We're not doing this for revenge. I leaned back against the wall, staring at the ceiling. I know. Another beat. We're doing it because he crossed a line, he said. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah, I said quietly. He did. And tomorrow night, we were going to make sure he couldn't pretend otherwise. Saturday didn't feel real. It felt staged, like everything that had happened over the past 2 weeks had been building toward one scene, and I was finally walking onto the set. I arrived at Julian's apartment at exactly 6:02 p.m., takeout in one hand, a bottle of wine in the other. Normal things, ordinary things, the kind of things you bring to a quiet night in, not to the emotional equivalent of a controlled explosion. Julian opened the door before I knocked. He looked calm. Too calm. You ready? He asked. No, I said honestly. Good, he replied. Me neither. That almost made me smile. Almost. The apartment smelled like something overcooked. Burnt garlic, overheated oil, ambition going wrong. And then Mason appeared in the kitchen doorway. He froze when he saw me. Actually froze. Like his brain couldn't process what it was seeing. What the hell are you doing here? He demanded. I stepped inside like I belonged there, because in some strange way, I did. Julian invited me, I said, setting the takeout on the counter. Julian walked past him casually, grabbing plates like this was any other night. Relax, he said. We'll stay in my room. You won't even know we're here. Mason's face darkened. Oh, I'll know, he snapped. Because this is my apartment, too. Ours, Julian corrected calmly. I pay half the rent, remember? That hit harder than I expected. Because for the first time, Mason wasn't in control of the room. He looked like he wanted to argue, to push, to escalate. But something stopped him. Maybe the realization that I wasn't reacting the way I used to. Maybe the fact that Julian wasn't backing down. Or maybe, for once, he didn't have a version of reality he could twist into his favor. Trevor, he stopped himself, shaking his head. Tessa will be here in an hour. Great, I said lightly. Hope she likes Chinese food. His jaw clenched, but he didn't say anything else, because there wasn't anything left to say. Julian and I set up in his room. Plates, chopsticks, wine poured into mismatched glasses. We sat across from each other, the door slightly cracked. Not wide enough to be obvious, just enough to hear. Is this too much? I asked quietly. Julian considered it for a second. Probably, he said. But after everything he's done, I think we've earned a front row seat. I huffed a small laugh. Fair. There was a brief silence. Then his hand brushed mine. Not dramatic, not intentional, just there. And for a second, I didn't pull away, because it didn't feel wrong. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like something steady, grounded, real. Then the front door opened. Voices, a woman's voice, light, polished, slightly breathy. Sorry I'm late, she said. Traffic was insane. Tessa. I felt my chest tighten, not from jealousy. From clarity. This was the person he chose to risk everything for. And suddenly, she didn't seem intimidating, just human. Hey, Mason said, his tone instantly softer, warmer. You look amazing. Of course he did. Of course he turned it on that easily, because that's what he did. That's what he was good at. I felt Julian's fingers lightly curl around mine. Not possessive, not performative, just present. We listened. I hope you don't mind the apartment, Mason said. My roommate situation's a little complicated right now. Tessa laughed softly. You mentioned a pause. Then, yeah, about that. Her voice shifted slightly. You said you were single. Silence. The kind that lands heavy.
Unavoidable.
I am, Mason said quickly. Totally single. Julian and I exchanged a look, and in that moment, we both knew. This was it. He was just here earlier, Tessa continued. The guy from Instagram. My ex, Mason said. We broke up weeks ago. Another silence. Thicker this time. Your relationship status changed 6 days ago, she said. I almost smiled, because something about hearing it from her, from someone outside the situation, made it undeniable. No gaslighting, no twisting, just facts. It's complicated, Mason said finally. Is it? She replied.
Footsteps. Closer.
Then, she appeared in the doorway. And for the first time, our worlds collided in the open. She looked exactly like her photos.
Polished. Composed.
But now, confused.
Calculating.
You're the ex? She asked, looking at me. Current ex, I said calmly. Her gaze shifted to Julian. And you're the roommate?
Yeah.
And you're dating her now? There was a beat.
A choice.
A moment where this could still be played off.
Minimized.
Avoided. Julian didn't hesitate. Yeah, he said simply. And then, his hand tightened around mine. Not for show. Not for drama. But because he meant it. Something in my chest shifted. Not explosive. Not overwhelming. Just certain. Tessa looked between us, then at Mason, then back at us. And I saw it happen. The realization, the understanding, the decision. This is too much, she said, shaking her head slightly. I don't do drama. Tessa, wait! Mason stepped forward. No, she cut him off. You said you were single. You're clearly not, at least not in the way you made it sound. It's not like that. It is exactly like that, she said calmly, and just like that, she walked away. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed was louder than anything that had come before it. Mason stood there, frozen. Like the entire structure he'd been balancing had finally collapsed all at once. Then, he turned, and the anger hit. This is your fault, he snapped, pointing at me. Both of you. I stood up slowly. No, I said. It's not. You ruined everything! No, I repeated, steadier this time. You did. His expression twisted. You had no right. I had every right, I cut in. The moment you decided I wasn't enough, but still wanted to keep me around, just in case. That landed hard. You don't get to lie, I continued. You don't get to manipulate. You don't get to erase me and then act surprised when I stop playing along. He turned to Julian. And you, he snapped. You're supposed to be my friend. Julian didn't flinch. Friends don't lie about their relationships, he said calmly. Or try to ruin someone's life when they get caught. My boss got a call, I said, stepping forward. My car got keyed. Julian's door got covered in harassment. Mason's eyes flickered, just for a second, and that was enough. You think you can prove that? He said quickly. I shook my head. I don't need to. A pause. Then, Tessa just proved everything I needed to know. That was it. That was the final piece. Because for once, he couldn't twist it, couldn't reframe it, couldn't make me doubt what I had seen. He was exposed, and he knew it. You turned everyone against me, he said, his voice quieter now, but still sharp. I met his gaze. No, I said. You did that all by yourself. Silence. Then, get out, he said suddenly. Julian tilted his head. Actually, he replied, This is my apartment too. Another pause. Another crack in the control Mason thought he still had. If it's too uncomfortable, Julian added calmly, you're welcome to leave. Mason stared at both of us for a long moment. Then, without another word, he walked out, and this time he didn't slam the door. The next 2 weeks were strange,
Messy.
predictable in all the worst ways. Mason cycled through every version of himself.
Angry. Silent. Dictum.
He posted vague quotes online about betrayal and fake friends. People believed him for a while. Until Julian posted the photos of his door. Until the messages surfaced. Until the narrative stopped being something he could control. He lasted 8 more days in the apartment. Then he left. Moved back in with his parents. Called it healing. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. Because by then, I was already somewhere else. Not physically, but emotionally. Julian and I didn't rush anything. We didn't label it immediately. Didn't pretend it was something it wasn't. We just kept talking. Kept spending time together. Kept choosing honesty over performance. And somewhere along the way, something real formed. Not dramatic. Not chaotic. Just steady. Last week, he moved his record player into my apartment. We spent hours organizing vinyls and arguing over which horror movie deserved to go on top of the stack. It was quiet. Simple. Almost boring. And for the first time, that felt like exactly what I wanted. Yesterday, Mason unblocked me. One message. Just one. I hope you're happy. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I opened my camera, took a photo of Julian and me sitting across from each other at trivia night, both wearing matching "I'm with stupid" shirts, pointing at each other like idiots, and I sent it. No caption, no explanation, just the truth. Because sometimes the best ending isn't loud. It isn't revenge. It isn't even closure. Sometimes it's just choosing someone who never needed to erase you to feel complete. And finally understanding, you should have chosen yourself a long time ago.